Hello, I'm Stephen Mosier, President of the Population Research Institute. When Obamacare was finally signed into law in March of 2010, it faced a huge national controversy over what it meant for our country's healthcare system, particularly on issues like abortion, rationing, and care for the elderly. Now, a lot of groups have analyzed the bill and have found that, despite assurances to the contrary, the bill has deep-seated problems. This series will deal with some of those problems. The biggest issue surrounding Obamacare is the issue of abortion. President Obama repeatedly assured Americans that it does not in any way fund elective abortions. He even signed an executive order which supposedly guaranteed this. Is this true? Every year, Congress has to approve a budget for the government. It includes the budget for Health and Human Services, which we call HHS. Back in 1976, Congressman Henry Hyde created an amendment to HHS's budget, which said it could not be used to pay for abortions. It made exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother, but it forbid all elective abortions. Since HHS's budget is where money for government-sponsored health care services come from, the Hyde Amendment made sure that taxpayer funds did not cover abortions. The problem with Obamacare is that it creates new pathways for sending money directly to various health care projects, so the money doesn't have to go through HHS. This means that the Hyde Amendment doesn't cover this money, and that means it's open to funding abortions. Now, some congressmen tried to fix this by passing an amendment called the STUPAK-Pitts Amendment, named after Democrat Bart Stupak and Republican Joe Pitts. This amendment took Henry Hyde's language and applied it to the entirety of Obamacare. The Stupak Amendment was the only real bill-wide restriction on abortion. The problem is, that restriction isn't there anymore. Since the Obama administration was afraid they wouldn't be able to pass the Senate version of the bill again, they placed enormous pressure on the House of Representatives to change their version of the bill to match the Senate's. So the House removed the Stupak Amendment. In return for its removal, President Obama wrote an executive order that supposedly guarantees that Obamacare will not fund abortions. An executive order cannot amend a bill. An executive order is not law, so it doesn't have the same legal basis as the language that's actually written into the law itself. Now, Obama's legal team knew this, and Obama himself is a graduate of Harvard Law School. And that's why at the end of the order is a clause that reminds the reader that an executive order can only be followed if it is consistent with the laws that are already on the books. So even Obama's executive order acknowledges its complete ineffectiveness in the face of the law. What this means is that the language that is in Obamacare is the language that will win out in a court battle. This is why the executive order didn't bother Cecil Richards, the president of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. She dismissed it as nothing more than a symbolic gesture. That's why the language of the order doesn't even really restrict abortion. It can't, because it can't compete with what's in the law. Most of the order just points to the bill, and it reiterates what it says, which we've already seen is inadequate. Now, the order does make a provision that says that funds used for community health centers, CHCs for short, need to abide by the Hyde Amendment. But this language is not in the bill, which means again that the executive order is useless on the matter. In the end, it might look like Obamacare has abortion restrictions, but it doesn't. And without abortion restrictions, every legislator knows that in the real world, what is not explicitly forbidden is permitted. Since abortion is not specifically forbidden by most of Obamacare, it will therefore be ruled legal in many cases. Now let's go over a short list of what Obamacare provisions will inevitably lead to abortion funding. There are three main points. First is the money for community health centers that we've already mentioned. Many of these CHCs see abortion as an essential service, and without abortion restricting language in the bill, money that goes to these centers will pay for abortions. Money for temporary high-risk pools is another problem. Now, Obamacare provides $5 billion for temporary high-risk pools that cover people with pre-existing conditions until the actual healthcare exchanges kick in 2014. Now, this money goes straight to the states and is administered by them. Because there are no abortion restrictions, The states are free to use this money to fund abortions if they feel like it. National Right to Life was actually able to uncover evidence that Pennsylvania and New Mexico were planning on using this money to fund abortion programs. There are independent reports by factcheck.org and from the Congressional Research Office that verify National Right to Life Committee's original findings here. Once this became public, HHS released a statement saying that HYDE-type restrictions would be applied, but the White House quickly released another statement assuring people that these new abortion restrictions did not represent a precedent for other programs or policies. Finally, there's the money that will go for federal insurance plans. Now, Obamacare provides 2 or more state-sponsored insurance plans. According to the bill, only one of these plans actually needs to have restrictions on abortion, meaning that federal dollars will almost certainly be paying for abortions in the other state plans. And even this restriction is limited and expires at the end of each year. What's the bottom line? Does Obamacare expand abortion coverage in the United States? The answer is yes. It will mark the biggest expansion of abortion coverage in the United States in U.S. history.